welcome with me very loudly Zaki Manian and Dean Tribble once again.
Thank you for having us back. We may look familiar. So as he said, obviously the stable tokens are an interest, are a very hot topic right now. It matters a lot to making an economy work, and so we're gonna deep dive into the Inter protocol. And if we can put up a slide here, or do I push a button to get it there? There we go. If we can put up the so the Inter protocol is the protocol that we're building for Agoric to provide a stable token, a fully collateralized stable token in the Agoric ecosystem, but it's already deeply entwined with IBC, and that makes it accessible across the rest of the ecosystem. What's interesting, or what people will care about for that is, how does it work? How is it stable? How do we have assurance in this thing? And the stage we're at is, internally development, doing security and so forth, but also inviting comments and inviting interest and making sure that it would be something that would be of value and use to the rest of the ecosystem. So I'll go through a few slides of introduction, and then we'll put up, what's really internal engineering diagram and kind of walk through it, where Zaki will grill me, and I'll grab some of the other Agoric about what's going on there and how it all works. Right. So
the way to conceive of Inter is native stable token for the IBC network. So a stable token that is born of and a native to the IBC network. It is the initial application of the Agoric protocol. So it uses everything that Dean talked about earlier in the morning, composable JavaScript contracts, Zoe, all of this stuff. So all of the technology that will be coming in permissionless form to a later release of the Agoric network gets battle tested here. Exactly. So yeah. And
then will be used by contracts later, but as you said, it's built on the
And then the third piece is, where is it that we think Inter is going to be used? Well, this is getting started up, right?
You mean once as it's launched, we think it'll be used in the interchain. To me, the most obvious use case, but it'll be determined by the community, is bring Atom as collateral over, borrow Inter, mint Inter on that, and take the Inter over to Osmosis, Juno, other existing running platforms that have DeFi, and use it there.
Yeah. So it has this. The Agoric platform needs a stable token. It will be used to pay for gas, but the way Inter is conceived right now is this first period of Inter is it's really about bringing IBC assets over to Agoric, getting Inter, taking Inter out to the IBC network for use.
Yep. So the Inter protocol is a set of smart contracts and sort of an overall architecture. There is a white paper up right now. It's on the Agoric economy page, but Inter, sort of growing beyond Agoric, there will be a separate launch of a separate Inter site, or a separate site for Inter, that the community outside of Agoric will be building and maintaining and growing stuff. The key smart contracts that comprise Inter are the vault system, which is an over-collateralized vault like a Maker vault. So the goal here is fully collateralized stable token, no algo magic. It's somewhere there is either dollars or there's some crypto asset that is worth more than you minted against it, so that the liquidation process can cover debts if the market turns. And we've seen that model be robust in the face of market downturns. Maker being the most obvious one. So that's what the vault system is. It then needs to engage in liquidation. That's a separate contract, so we can evolve and enrich the liquidation as it goes by. The liquidation, the initial version of liquidation, can automatically liquidate on an automated market maker, on a Uniswap V1 style AMM, but where IST, the interstable token, is the central token that all of the assets are in terms of in this Uniswap V1 style AMM. The reserve then is where initial capital to provide a buffer for liquidation, a buffer for shortfalls in liquidation in case the market turns down quickly. The reserve holds assets that will be ever growing to provide additional stabilization and collateral for backing the IST, the interstable token, as we go forward. And the reserve will keep a lot of its capital as liquidity in the AMM, and we'll go into some of that. And then the last two are the parity stability module that's similar to the peg stability module, but we have economists on staff that won't let us misuse the word peg that way. So parity stability module, for basically being able to take a real reference token like USDC that's got a direct dollar backing, and use that as a type of token that you can translate into go from one USDC into one Inter or one IST. And then finally, there's some integration and support into the direct build staking in the Agoric platform for a small portion of IST. Right? And so the key here is there can be multiple contracts that all of which have the ability to mint IST based on debt limits for that contract, and we expect over time with governance to be able to extend that as people come up with more robust, better collateralized, stronger mechanisms for doing stable tokens.
And as the IBC network gets more economic capability.
Yes, right. So here's that diagram I threatened you with, and we're going to walk through it, all these pieces, and I'll kind of point and he'll ask me hard questions, right? So I don't know if you can see it here. I will read it out and you'll be able to follow it. We're actually going to start on that side, right? And so I will be the...
Okay, so, all right, so here's what we're going to try and do. We are going to try and not spend a lot of time in slides, and instead we're going to talk about workflows and how you interact with the components. And hopefully this kind of will be a fast way of getting an overall picture of this. It's an experiment in how to present inner protocol. Okay.
To keep you awake.
Okay. So Dean, I have atoms. Okay. I'm sitting on the Cosmos Hub. I've got my atoms, unstaked atoms, and I decide I want some inner.
Okay.
What am I doing?
So over IBC, you transfer using Kepler, using any mechanism that you can do IBC transfer over into a atom account, into an account on the Agoric chain.
Yeah.
And you just transfer atom using normal ICS-20. It shows up here.
So if you've used osmosis, similar workflow to like deposit on osmosis.
Then there is a web front end, or rather a React Native or React app that can talk to the chain, that you can then take your atom and say, I want to make a vault, I want to put it into a vault. So you take your atom, go to the Vault Factory. You can read those letters, right? That says Vault Factory. Where
what is a purse?
Say it again?
What is a purse?
Oh, a purse is the word. We've been doing smart contracts for a long time. Purse is the term in ERTP that's loosely like an account, right? So I can have a purse contains a particular type, a particular brand of asset. So I have a purse of atoms. It can only contain atoms. One of the interesting differences on Agoric is I don't just, as you see in most wallets, here's all your ETH, here's all your atoms, here's all your whatever. It's like, no. Here's my marketing account and it has atoms. Here's my personal spending account and it has atoms. Here's my fee account and it has IST in it, right? So you can have multiple purses with the same currency. And purses can contain NFTs, they can contain, semi-fungible tokens and so forth. So that's a purse. And when you bring money over into a Cosmos level account, it shows up inside of the JavaScript environment and inside of your Agoric wallet as a corresponding purse. So you can then pull money out of it in JavaScript and transfer it around and send it as payments and participate in the rich Java object environment for doing smart contracts that I mentioned earlier, but it just starts by just transferring it into IBC and poof, it appears.
Okay. So I brought my atoms over.
You brought your atoms over. You go to the Vault UI and you say, I want to borrow some IST. I want to mint some IST, and it says, how much atom do you want to lock up? It will, and you say, I will give you this much atom if you give me this much IST. And it will, like a swap trade, it will understand how much you can actually mint against the atom you're locking up. But fundamentally,
so how does it know this?
It knows, very good, right. So fundamental to any kind of, or fundamental to liquidation and vaults and pricing of this flavor, there is an Oracle network that will produce a price, that reports on what's the price in dollars of Atom based on trading on various centralized exchanges, on Osmosis, on Crescent, on whatever set of exchanges that matter for people trading. And the Oracle...
And so, like, why... I think that has an interesting segue, which is, why are we doing this with Atom? Like, why Atom?
Right. So, you know, the hub of Cosmos is, of course, Atom. Atom provides a, you know, the Gaia hub provides a big, stable repository of significant asset inside of the Cosmos ecosystem. And so for us, it's the first collateral we care about. Now, whether Atom will actually be what the community deploys first is going to be up to the community. But that's where, you know, that funded the IBC work, that funded the Cosmos SDK that all this relies on, and you know, it's the big anchoring asset nearby.
Well, it trades on a lot of exchanges.
Right.
Price discovery is very robust. Volumes are high.
It's the way you can get fiat
and then
on-ramp.
it's IBC native.
Right, and it's IBC native, and you can get on-ramp there, right? You can bring cash, get Atom, bring it over here, borrow IST, and go party in the DeFi world, right?
Yep.
So, lots of reasons. We then expect to have assets from other chains also, but that'll be up to the community. Okay, so I bring my Atom, I say, you know, based on this price, and by the way, the Oracle network, you know, Agoric's a big project. This Oracle network simply staking is driving the development of. There's several different Chainlink node operators that are all working together to use similar protocol, you know, the Chainlink protocol, to be able to provide reporting of the same kind of quotes and aggregating them where the aggregation contract is written in this framework, in JavaScript. It runs on-chain using the same, you know, same libraries and mechanisms and framework. And so we have a new Oracle network, and we'll be able to have, I mean, it just looks like a DeFi component, right? I can have a few lines of JavaScript that will run this function when the price crosses the threshold, and that's used in here in multiple places. In this particular case, it would be used to give a quote here of how much could you mint, how much IST could you mint given a certain amount of Atom. And some of those elements have collateralization ratios. So if I bring over $1,000 in Atom and the required collateralization ratio is 150%, then you could only mint whatever it is, 600 IST against it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay? So I go here, it will create a vault object inside of the vault factory contract. So that's a separate, completely segregated vault that holds onto the Atom that Zaki provided and records the debt of the IST that was minted for him and returns to him and deposits rather into his purse for IST. It deposits the IST he borrowed and gives him back a vault object that controls the ongoing relationship about the collateral that he just borrowed against. And so he can pay it off, he can borrow more, he can add more Atom in order to be able to borrow more. Interest will be charged against that, and he can check the interest rates, all those kinds of things. Okay? Then, if he leaves it alone and gradually is charging interest, or if the price of Atom goes down, you know, that sometimes happens, then this vault factory, it knows the list of all the vaults for Atom, and they're sorted by how close are they to liquidation, how close did they borrow. If he's got $200 in Atoms and there are $1,000 in Atoms, and he's borrowed $990, he's really close to that limit, right? And so it talks to the Oracle. It has a request to the Oracle, which is a few lines of JavaScript code, that says when the price crosses this threshold of the most risky vault, let me know so I can liquidate. And so this process, it's ticking interest according to a clock. So unlike most chains, the Agoric chain is active. So there's a timer. This thing signed up to get notified every hour or every day to charge interest, and that will tick these things up. And if he comes in and borrows more against it, or the Oracle comes in and says, hey, the price dropped, this could get signaled to say you've got to do some liquidation. It then takes the most risky vault, checks that the price is below threshold, and if so, it takes it and hands it off to the liquidation contract.
So how, you know, I think we should call out, this is probably the biggest difference, other than the practical implementation in model, from Maker, right? Up until now, what we've described is basically Maker. And now we have the liquidation mechanism.
Right. So first off, so what liquidation contract gets used is determined by governance. And we can install new liquidation contracts, and other applications can use the same can use the same contract and make their own instances to liquidate in those other contracts. So this is something where we expect pluggable components and reusable, separable contracts that are all nicely, securely pluggable together. The only contract in this case that points at, this contract instantiates the new liquidation contract based on whatever governance told it to do, instantiates it, takes the vault that's now being liquidated, takes the collateral and hands it off to the liquidation saying, here's how much money, here's how much you need to sell it for. Please try and get me at least that much. Don't sell any more than you have to, because I'd like to return the collateral to the client. But if you got to sell it all, you got to sell it all, right? You need to cover this much debt. Okay? This thing then engage in a liquidation strategy, and we can talk about that liquidation strategy. Let's take the simple one, which is not what we're doing, but the simplest one would be simply turn around, take the collateral, sell it on the AMM for as much as you can get, or sell it on the AMM for as much as you can get, but no more than their debt, right? Or as little more than their debt as possible. And once that's succeeded, return that over to here, count their debt as paid off, give them back any remaining collateral, and the vault is liquidated and you're done. Right? And so then the payout of their outstanding vault will be some atom that will be returned to their atom purse, and whatever IST was left over. I like Chris Hibbert, the guy who did a lot of the implementation on this, has a nice characterization of what AMMs need to do that people mostly don't think about when you're looking at 18 decimal places of AMM. But if you're selling in an AMM bottles that are six tokens apiece, right? And now you have to have a debt of 20 that you pay off. Do you sell 3 bottles, which means you only got 18 bucks and you're short, or do you sell 4 bottles, in which case you had to sell $24, 24 tokens worth, and you're 4 tokens over? In the case of, since we cover a broad range of tokens, you could have ones that have that level of resolution where that difference actually matters, where that difference is significant. If you were, for example, using semi-fungible NFTs that were worth $1,000 a piece as collateral, which we don't plan to do anytime soon, but you could, then either I made 1,000 IST or I made 2,000 IST. If your debt was 1,200, I got to sell 2,000 worth. I've now paid off your debt. Here's your 800 IST and change. So we care about that level of resolution, and there's a lot of precision to that. But that's what the liquidation's job is, to make sure I've sold enough to cover your debt. It hands it off to here. Right? Oh. The other thing that it does is there might be liquidation penalties. That's dependent on the particular collateral type, so it might be lower for Atom because of its volatility relative to some other token. Those liquidation penalties go to the reserve. And so the reserve...
Let's do reserve quickly. Let's quickly do the reserve, the parity stability module, and like 1 sentence on boost.
Sure.
And then we can do questions.
Great, okay. So the reserve is where, to seed all of this stuff, you don't want to come in and try borrowing money when the bank has no capital, right? You want a bank that is nice and solvent. And so a big part of any of the architecture of this is to be able to make sure that the system is solvent, right? And so for all of the collateral types, there are parameters like what is the required over-collateralization ratio. The more volatile your token is, the newer your token is, the higher that collateralization ratio, the minimum collateralization ratio has to be, and the sooner it's, the higher the number, it's going to go, yeah, it's too risky, I'm going to sell your collateral in order to pay off your debt and close out your loan. Right. Okay. So the reserve holds capital to cover shortfall, right? If when I'm liquidating, I don't liquidate fast enough, or the price falls too fast, such that at 120%, I've got a loan of 100 IST, and the atoms are worth 120. At that point, we want to liquidate. If we can liquidate before atom falls to 90, then we covered your debt and we're square. We're good, right? If we sold when it was still 110, we sold $100 worth. We paid off your debt. Here's your 10 atom and change. we're good, right? But if it fell too far, you have what's called a shortfall, where, great, you got a loan of 100, I was only able to sell your collateral for 80, that means we've got a shortfall of 20, someone's got to cover that. And as you can see, if you don't have a process and architecture to cover it, you can have serious solvency issues and have a collapse of your overall system. So part of it is the fundamental CDP mechanism of over-collateralization, right? If I start selling at 120, I've got a certain amount of time to have it drop. If I start selling at 150, I got lots more time to be able to sell enough collateral to cover your debt before it falls. Okay, so a couple more things about that. So the parameters of that will be determined by continuous modeling. We are working with Gauntlet, who does, Tarun Chitra and their company. They do a lot of economic modeling and economic analysis to be able to model various systems, look at all of the current tick data on all the different exchanges, model out what is the current volatilities in the market and that sort of thing, in order to provide a good compromise of liquidation, speed, and minimizing the amount of over-collateralization to have an efficient market. The reserve has capital in order to cover when that's wrong, right? You don't want to have your over-collateralization so high that you never risk anything, because then it's economically inefficient. So you have it reasonable.
Let's move on.
Okay, fine. And so the reserve has that capital.
We're going to run out of time for questions.
Okay. What else did you want me to hit here? Yes. Okay. So parity stability module, that is, here I've got Atom, it's volatile, and I may need to liquidate it. If I'm bringing over USDC, which is...
Via Axelar, for instance.
Via Axelar, exactly, or Gravity Bridge, what have you, right? If I'm bringing over the USDC, that's pretty reliably worth $1, right? Arguably worth $1. Obviously, if that changes, then we slam down the debt limits, and now you can no longer run against USDC, and we have that as a safety mechanism. But if I'm bringing it over, I don't want to have it be over-collateralized. It's worth $1. IST, we want to be worth $1, right? So this module lets you do approximately one-for-one trading, right? It might take a fee out as reward for the people operating the system, but that fee would be like, 1 basis point, right? So this is the dollar-for-dollar conversion of USDC comes in, IST comes out. And then I can take IST and get USDC and go take it over and exit using the, exit cash using the IST module, or using USDC off-ramps.
Okay, boost, and then questions.
So boost is a mechanism to be able to mint IST against staked build, or rather against the future income stream of rewards for staked build. Now, this is not, I've got $100 in build, so I'm going to borrow $90 worth. No. It's a very small fraction, so anyone who's got staked build on Agoric will have access to some IST. So it'll be like, start out at 2%, grow to 5%. Maybe when we're really feeling the system is stable, we've got a lot of experience, it grows to 10%, right? But it's not the collateralization. The key here is build is the staking token. We don't want it to be a collateral, partly because you then end up with that self-reflexive thing that results in incentivized, attacks like we saw in the last week. But it is the case that people that build that's staked does provide an income stream that you can mint IST against, and thus anyone participating in the ecosystem as part of operating this network ends up being able to also participate in the DeFi world.
Okay. All right, let's do questions. We've got 6 minutes.
Here comes the man with the question.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. And actually, there are a lot of questions, so I'm not sure if we can cover all of it, but there are a lot of questions. So I would love to start with one question that is very, very interesting. It says, aren't you concerned for sucking up liquidity by over-collateralizing? Same reason why DAI is not so big.
So the answer is, okay, I don't need the diagram. The answer is, at the beginning, what we want is good grease for an economy, good grease for the interchain economy, because the power of having a real, solid, reliable stablecoin is huge. The power of having it being able to be backed by everyone else's interchain assets, it is even bigger. And so some inefficiency there, I think, is worth it. But part of the reason why it's exciting that this is on this nice, extensible, programmable environment is we expect over time people to add elements to the contract environment that lower that over-collateralization ratio, right? If you've got insurance mechanisms you can plug in that will cover your debt if the collateral falls, then you can run with much less
Or
over-collateralization.
even more exciting if we get to the point where interchain accounts can hold like a derivatives position.
Yes, right, yes.
And
That's not something that Agoric plans to do. That's something that the market can provide in this environment.
I see. And speaking of collateralization, another question is, could IST be collateralized partly by real-world assets such as real estate, commodities, or SDR to diversify from crypto's volatile nature?
Right. So the answer is, in principle, yes. Part of the exciting thing about it is, governance, the builder DAO, the stake build vote, can decide to add new contracts with new basis for allocating that. Now, I personally am going to strongly advocate that, we care about it being fully collateralized, so we can rely on this existing for a long time and being very robust. But real-world assets are a fine thing to rely on for that. Those have challenges. There are companies out there solving that, and we would like to bring them in as into the system. Up to all y'all as to when that happens and how it happens. And then governance to decide what's the debt, what's the credit, what's the limit that you can mint based on that, what's the collateralization ratio, et cetera.
Yeah, and let's stick at collateralization. Like, I've never seen so many questions about collateralization. Yeah.
So did something happen?
Yeah,
something.
It's like people are paying attention.
Yeah. So the question is, can the collateralization ratio ever go below 100%? If so, how do you prevent a Luna situation?
Well, okay, so
this is why we care so much about the liquidation mechanism, right? The liquidation mechanism and the reserve, the liquidation mechanism is the primary thing that's responsible for ensuring that the collateralization ratio is what we expect it to be. And then if that fails, then the reserve is the last line of defense.
That's right. Well, the last line of defense is in some sense the builder DAO saying, okay, we will contribute, or someone that has a bunch of assets contributing assets to the reserve to pump it back up. So, banks have had recollateralization events, once in a millennia, but we work hard to make it so that the liquidation process is very smooth. Actually, one of the reasons for the parity stability module is it tightens the arbitrage and it tightens the liquidation cycle so that it's easier for someone to be prepared to take local liquidations efficiently before things fall below 100%. So it's possible. There are buffers for exactly that shortfall in order to cover it, and that's why we have sort of continuous modeling to adjust those buffers up as you start to get market volatility.
And one of the things that we're going to be doing over the next few months is actually stress testing this.
Yeah.
We're gonna build a test net. We'll simulate like a large, atom price drop, people having to bring IST from and like parity stability module coins over IBC, mint more IST, ARB the AMM, like all of this process.
Right.
That's actually a question from my side. So you mentioned the buffer. Can I imagine this buffer like similar to the buffer that MakerDAO is using right now?
Yep. I think that's right. The reserve is exactly the capital that you pay off shortfalls with if you screwed up your over-collateralization ratios. And the over-collateralization ratios are adjusted based on what we see as the practical actual latency of liquidation. So as we get better and better, as we get tighter loops, as we get better integration to be able to liquidate not just into our local AMM but onto Osmosis or Crescent or what have you, all of that means that you can have lower buffers because your liquidation efficiency is more robust.
Sounds very cool. And last but not least, let's have one question that does not have anything to do with collateralization. I think we covered this enough. So which kind of oracles are you using for asset price feeds in order to prevent an attack?
So we looked really hard for oracle providers. We worked closely with Chainlink. We talked to Band. What we ended up doing, on the recommendation of several of those parties, is we're actually doing another Oracle network that is Cosmos native. So this is, as I said, the code is built out by Simply Staking, who have a large contingent here. So if you want to find out how it works, talk to them, because we work together on the architecture of it. But it's a Chainlink style architecture run by Chainlink node operators that understand how this works. They've been doing it for literally years, but they're reporting directly into these feeds into smart contracts running in the Agoric system written using our framework. So you can see it, it participates in the audit record and so forth, that produces the prices that we will rely on, and it will also then be available to other smart contracts on our system once third parties are adding those to be able to use prices, price authority and Oracle as a DeFi Lego. And so it'll be visible, it'll be extensible, there'll be a community around it, it will be funded because we consider this a critical part of an infrastructure, and it will not be under our control, it'll be under the control of people who are expert at this.
Yeah, sounds very exciting, and we still have a bunch of questions here, but we are running out of time, but I guess you guys will be on ground for the rest of the day.
We'll be around.
Yes.
Come find us.
And in particular, there's an Agoric room over there in that corner. I have office hours from 5 to 6. I apologize. That means I will be listening to Sunny and others on recorded, but I'll be there for people who have questions.
And you also have cool merch. So, free merch. We are in a bear market. We need
merch.
free clothes.
That's right.
That's it. Thank you, Dean and Zaki.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.